Have you ever seen someone throw away a diamond because they were chasing gold? David did. He left a woman who would have stood by him for life because he believed another woman had a more beautiful face, a bigger body, and a better figure. At first, everyone thought he had made the right choice. Months later, the same people were asking one question: what exactly was David thinking? This is the story of a man who lost peace while chasing beauty. But before we continue, let me ask you something. If you had to choose between beauty and good character, which one would you choose? Keep listening, because David's answer changed his life forever. David was a young businessman. He worked hard every day and dreamed of becoming successful. But there was one thing about David that everyone knew. He cared too much about what people thought. Whenever he saw another man walking with a beautiful woman, he secretly wished that was him. Whenever his friends talked about women with beautiful faces and attractive bodies, David joined the conversation with excitement. To him, beauty was everything. He wanted people to look at his wife and say, "David is a lucky man." Years later, David met Grace. Grace was different from the women David usually admired. She was simple. She wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads whenever she entered a room. She wasn't famous for her looks. She had a slim body. She didn't have the curves many men talked about. She didn't wear expensive clothes. She didn't spend hours trying to impress people. Instead, Grace had something many people ignored: a beautiful heart. She respected everyone. She prayed every morning before leaving her room. She believed a peaceful home was more important than showing off outside. When David lost money in business, Grace encouraged him. When David became frustrated, Grace reminded him not to give up. She cooked with love. She cleaned without complaining. She managed their home with wisdom. Whenever David came home tired, she welcomed him with a smile. She wasn't perfect, but every day she tried to become a better wife. Many people admired her. Some even told David, "You have a good woman, don't ever lose her." David would smile, but deep inside, his mind was somewhere else. Instead of appreciating Grace, he was comparing her. Every time he opened social media, he saw pictures of women with perfect makeup, expensive clothes, and attractive figures. He watched videos where people praised beauty more than character. Slowly, those pictures entered his mind. Whenever Grace stood beside him, he no longer saw the woman who supported him. He only saw what she didn't have. One evening, while they were preparing dinner together, Grace smiled and asked, "Is everything okay? You've been quiet these days." David forced a smile. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. Something inside him had changed. Weeks passed, then months. David became colder. He stopped complimenting Grace. He stopped laughing with her. Sometimes he stayed outside late without any reason. Grace noticed. One night, she quietly asked, "Did I do something wrong?" David looked away. "No." "Then why do you treat me differently now?" David stayed silent. Grace didn't know the truth. She thought David was simply stressed. So she prayed even more. She became more caring. She cooked his favorite meals. She tried everything she could to make him happy. But no matter what she did, David's heart had already started leaving the marriage. Then one Saturday afternoon, everything changed. David attended a friend's birthday party. The music was loud. People laughed and danced. That was where he saw her, Vanessa. She walked into the hall wearing a simple dress, yet almost everyone turned to look. She had a beautiful smile, a confident walk, an attractive figure, the kind of beauty David had always imagined. For a moment, he couldn't stop staring. His friend noticed. "You like her?" David smiled. "I won't lie. She's beautiful." His friend laughed. "Her name is Vanessa." That night, David couldn't stop thinking about her. Even after he returned home, Grace welcomed him with food. She asked how the party went. David answered with only one or two words. His mind wasn't at home anymore. It was with the woman he had just met. The next morning, David searched for Vanessa on social media. He found her. He followed her. She followed back. A simple conversation started. Then another. Soon, they were chatting every day. David told himself, "We're just friends." But was that really true? Every day, he became more excited to talk to Vanessa than to speak with his own wife. Grace noticed the distance growing wider, but she still had no idea why. One evening, she stood by the window after David had gone to bed. She whispered a short prayer. "God, if something is wrong, please help my husband." She had no idea. Another woman was already taking her place in David's heart, and David believed he had finally found the woman of his dreams. But what he didn't know was that beauty can hide secret, very dangerous secret, and the woman he was willing to sacrifice everything for was about to change his life forever. David finally got the woman he had always wanted. Beautiful face, beautiful body, the kind of woman that's made people turn their heads. He smiled and said to himself, "Now, this is the life I deserve." But there was one thing he never asked. What if the beauty he was chasing could not build a home? By the time he found the answer, it was already too late. After months of talking, David and Vanessa became very close. Every day, they chatted for hours. Whenever David received a message from her, he smiled. He felt alive again. Vanessa always looked perfect. Every picture she posted was beautiful. Every video made her look elegant. David became convinced that she was the woman he had been looking for all his life. Meanwhile, Grace noticed that her husband had completely changed. He barely looked at her. He hardly spoke to her. The man who once enjoyed eating dinner with her now preferred to stay on his phone. One evening, Grace sat beside him. She held his hand and asked softly, "David, are you happy with me?" David pulled his hand away. "I don't know anymore." Grace's heart sank. She wanted to ask another question, but she already knew the answer. A few weeks later, David made the decision that changed everything. He ended the marriage. Grace cried, not because she wanted to force him to stay, but because she never imagined that the man she loved would leave without appreciating everything she had done for him. Before she packed her things, she looked at David one last time. She said quietly, "I truly loved you. I prayed for you every day. I hope one day you find the happiness you're looking for." David didn't say anything. He believed he was walking into a better future. A few months later, David married Vanessa. The wedding was beautiful. Friends couldn't stop talking about how stunning the bride looked. People whispered, "David really upgraded." Hearing those words made David proud. He felt like he had won. For the first few weeks, everything looked perfect. They traveled. They took beautiful pictures. They posted smiling videos online. Everyone thought they were the perfect couple. But social media only shows what people want others to see. Behind closed doors, a different story was beginning. One evening, David came home tired after a long day at work. He dropped his bag and smiled. "Babe, what's for dinner?" Vanessa looked up from her phone. "Dinner? Yes. I haven't cooked." David laughed. "No problem. What are we eating?" She looked at him with a straight face. "I said I didn't cook." David stopped smiling. "You mean you're about to cook?" She shook her head. "No. So, what are we eating? Order something." David thought she was joking. He laughed again, but Vanessa didn't laugh. She picked up her phone and continued scrolling. David ordered food that night. He told himself, "It's just one day." The next day, the same thing happened. The day after that, nothing changed. One Saturday morning, David woke up early. The house was dirty. Clothes were everywhere. The kitchen sink was full. He walked into the bedroom. "Vanessa, aren't we cleaning today?" She stretched and replied, "You can clean if you want." David frowned. "What do you mean?" She sat up. "In my family, we don't stress ourselves with housework." David stared at her. "What do you mean you don't do housework?" She shrugged. "We hire people when we need help. That's how I grew up." David was speechless. Weeks passed. Things became worse. Vanessa spent money freely. She loved shopping. She loved expensive restaurants. She loved taking pictures. But whenever David talked about building a peaceful home together, she wasn't interested. If something broke in the house, she expected David to handle it. If there was no food, she expected David to buy it. If David complained, she became angry. One evening, David said, "I've been paying all the bills. The least you can do is help make this house feel like a home." Vanessa folded her arms. "I didn't marry you to become your housemaid." Those words hit David harder than he expected. For the first time, he remembered grace. He remembered the warm meals waiting for him after work. He remembered how peaceful his home used to be. He remembered how Grace prayed with him whenever life became difficult. Memories he had ignored suddenly became precious. But David still believed things could change. He bought Vanessa gifts. He tried to talk calmly. He even suggested they learn to do things together. Nothing worked. The arguments became louder. The silence became longer. The laughter disappeared. One night, David sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet. He looked around. The expensive furniture, the beautiful decorations, the luxury he had always wanted. Yet, he had never felt so lonely. Then his phone vibrated. It was an old friend. The message read, "David, have you heard about Grace?" David's heart skipped. He hadn't heard her name in months. He replied immediately, "What about her?" The next message changed everything. "She's getting married next week." David froze. He stared at the screen. His hands began to shake. Married already? Who could have married her so quickly? And why did hearing that news hurt so much? David didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he made a decision. He needed to see Grace just once. He told himself it was only to congratulate her. But deep inside, he wanted to know one thing. Had he made the biggest mistake of his life? He had no idea. What he was about to see would break his heart in a way he never imagined. Sometimes God doesn't punish people by taking things away. Sometimes He lets them see exactly what they lost. That was the day David's eyes finally opened. But by then, The woman he once called his wife no longer belonged to him. David could not sleep. His friend's message kept playing in his mind. Grace is getting married next week. He sat on the edge of his bed. His heart was heavy. He kept asking himself, how could she move on so fast? The next morning, he couldn't concentrate at work. He tried, but every few minutes, he remembered Grace, her smile, her kindness, the way she always prayed before they started each day. For the first time in a long time, David wasn't thinking about beauty. He was thinking about peace. Days later, he heard where Grace's wedding would take place. At first, he told himself he wouldn't go, but something inside him wouldn't let him rest. He just wanted to see her one last time. On the wedding day, David stood quietly at the back of the venue. Nobody noticed him. Then, the music started. Grace walked in. David could hardly believe his eyes. She looked beautiful, not because she suddenly had a body he once wanted, not because she wore expensive clothes. She looked beautiful because she looked happy. There was peace on her face, confidence in her smile. The sadness she carried after their divorce was gone. As David watched, the groom stepped forward. He smiled warmly at Grace. He held her hand with care. There was something different about the way he looked at her. He wasn't admiring her body. He was looking at her with love, real love. David felt a sharp pain in his chest. He remembered all the times he ignored her, all the times he complained about what she didn't have, all the moments he failed to appreciate everything she gave him. The wedding ended. David quietly left before anyone could recognize him. He walked to his car. For a long time, he just sat there without saying a word. Months passed. One afternoon, David went to visit an old friend. As he drove through the neighborhood, he saw someone standing outside a beautiful house. It was Grace. She was laughing. Beside her stood her husband. They were planting flowers together. A few moments later, Grace carried a tray of food outside. They sat together, they laughed, they prayed before eating. Her husband thanked her for the meal. Then he smiled and said, "I don't know what I did to deserve a wife like you." Grace smiled back. "I'm just happy we're building this home together." David watched from inside his car. Nobody knew he was there. Tears slowly filled his eyes. Suddenly, he remembered his own house. No laughter, no warm meals, no peace, only arguments, only silence, only regret. That evening, David returned home. The television was on. Vanessa was busy scrolling through her phone. She didn't even notice he had entered. David walked quietly into the kitchen. There was nothing to eat. He opened the refrigerator, almost empty. For a moment, he remembered how Grace never allowed him to go to bed hungry. He closed the refrigerator slowly. Then he sat alone in the living room. His house was beautiful, but it no longer felt like a home. Days turned into weeks. David tried once again to fix his marriage. He suggested counseling. He suggested spending more time together. He even apologized for the argument, but Vanessa wasn't interested. Finally, one evening, she looked at him and said, "David, we're too different. I don't think this marriage is working." Those words broke him. Not because he didn't expect them, but because he finally understood what Grace must have felt when he walked away. A few months later, the marriage ended. David was alone. One weekend, while cleaning old boxes, he found a small notebook. It belonged to Grace. Inside were short prayers she had written during the marriage. One page read, "Lord, help me become a better wife every day. Teach me to love David even when he doesn't understand me. Bless his work, protect his life, give him peace, even if he never knows how much I pray for him." David couldn't hold back his tears. He cried harder than he had cried in years, not because Grace had left, but because he finally realized what kind of woman she had been. He had searched everywhere for beauty, but he had already been married to a treasure. Years later, whenever young men asked David for marriage advice, he always gave the same answer. He would smile sadly and say, "Never marry someone only because of beauty. Beauty will catch your eyes, but character will carry your life. A beautiful face may attract people. A good heart builds a peaceful home. And if you ever find someone who truly loves you, respects you, supports you, and stands beside you through hard times, don't lose that person while chasing what only looks good on the outside. Because one day, you may discover that the person you ignored was the greatest blessing God ever gave you. And by the time you realize it, someone else may already be thanking God for the blessing you threw away.